UFC 315 is just around the corner. That is Jack Della Maddalena challenging for the belt against Bilal Muhammad. Takes place this weekend. I'm going to be giving you my quick predictions for the event, starting with the prelims, ending with the main card. Obviously, if you want to see my bets, all that kind of stuff, I'm going to be posting a best bets video. We're going to be bringing that back, and that's going to come out probably a few days before the event. And then obviously I'm going to be posting my bets on my Twitter or X account there. So obviously link in the description if you want to go see that. Obviously like and subscribe, come on. And yeah, let's just hop right into it. Okay, kicking us off, we have Brad Katona taking on Bekzat Almakan, I think is how you say his name. Bantamweight matchup, so obviously it's going to be a ton of action, probably pretty high pace in this one. Brad Katona, we all should know who he is by now. Tons of cardio, he sets a high pace, and obviously very well-rounded as well. He's got great takedown defense, great wrestling, striking, it's all right, but we all know who he is. Sometimes he does struggle against opponents who have big power that can kind of make him push back a little bit, where he looks a little bit uncomfortable. He's taking on somebody like Bekzat, who very strong finishing ability from him. Big power. Obviously, he fought Umar. Umar felt the power, and what did Umar do the rest of the fight? He just wrestle fucked him because of that power. So Bekzat does have a very real chance to win this. I think Brad Katona can probably squeak out a 29-28. I think the first round he's going to get hit by some power, and then he's going to shoot on the wrestling and just hopefully keep a high pace on Bekzat. And I feel like Bekzat is going to be waiting for that one big power punch. And I don't know whether he's going to get it on Brad Katona. I think Brad Katona can just kind of stay away from the power and be able to squeak out a 29-28 decision there. So Brad Katona, very low confidence though. So take this with a grain of salt. We have Felipe Dos Santos taking on Zhong Long Li. The pick is going to be Dos Santos. He's, shooter box kind of guy, comes in more dangerous. I think he overall in this fight up is just a more dangerous fighter. Sure, he can get hit a lot. Sure, he can get hit a lot straight up. But we saw in Zhong Yang Li, I wish he was more composed. It was the easiest fight against Haider Emil. Not saying easiest fight, but like, avoid the brawl. That's all you had to do, and then probably just wrestle the fuck out of Haider Emil, and he probably would have had more success what he did. Instead, he came in there, Haider obviously made it a scrap, and Zhong Yang Li fully invited himself into that. And I think if Dos Santos does the same, I think he's the more dangerous guy out of Zhong Yang Li. Li should be very smart, stay on the outside, shoot for the wrestling, and maybe just point fight as well. But I just don't think he has that fight IQ to stay consistent with that game plan, which is why I'm going to go with the shooter box guy here, because I just think he's the more dangerous guy if it does get into that scrap. So pretty simple breakdown, but again, very low confidence. Moving on. So obviously this is a Canadian card, so with that obviously a lot of the matchups are favored towards the Canadians, and this is one of them. Okay, we have Marc-Andre Barrios, who actually saw live when he got knocked out. Kind of tough. Taking on Bruno Silva. Marc-Andre, very high volume. He has good durability, obviously, apart from his last fight there. But he kind of builds into the fight. The more he gets going, in a sense, the better he looks. He starts working in the combinations. Doesn't really shoot for much takedowns. He kind of just is a striker. But obviously, if the opponent does have big power, there is a little bit of a worry. Luckily, Bruno Silva has none of it. He has no power. He's not himself anymore. If this was maybe 2-3 years ago, sure. But the problem is just Bruno Silva's just old now. He just doesn't seem committed to the game anymore, which is why I'm going to go with Marc Barrios. He just seems like he's the more committed guy to this sport, and I think if you're stepping in a cage, you have to be ready for this kind of stuff. And then Bruno just makes too many mistakes, simple as. So I'm seeing no wrestling. I'm just going to pick the better striker in who I think right now. And yeah, probably Marc-Andre. I could think he's probably first round, if not early in the second round. I think he can get it done. And this one I am pretty high confident on. So moving up into the card, we have Navajo Sterling taking on Ivan Erslan. I don't know, man. Like, people are very confident in Navajo, and I get it, right? He's a big dude for the light heavyweight division there. He has a good reach on him. He obviously is a prospect, so gotta kind of believe in him to some degree, and he has good finishing potential, obviously apart from his last fight. But overall, pretty well-rounded, good kind of fight IQ, can be a little low volume at times, but with that, he does know how to be composed in the cage and avoid the big power. He's taking on somebody like Ivan, who obviously has been very inconsistent recently, but he is a solid veteran. He has good fight IQ, and obviously the grappling there. if he decides to come into a wrestling game plan, we don't really know how Navajo's going to hold up. I'm still going to pick Navajo Sterling. Reason being, I think he's just a more deadly guy in the cage. I think he's going to hit harder, throw more volume, be able to be more composed, basically, overall. Even if Ivan does go for the wrestling and shoot in, I feel like Navajo's going to find that counter. So, Navajo, I think he gets it done. I'm like medium confidence in this one. I just, on undefeated prospects this year, not a good run. Not a good run. So, we'll see. But Navajo should be able to get this done. Moving on. Okay, so this one I feel like I'm pretty confident in. I feel like Modestas Bukauskas should get this done. I get why the line's 50-50, and obviously I'll get into that in a second, but let me just go over who each person is. Modestas Bukauskas, good striker, okay? He holds big power, he's resilient, all that kind of stuff, but when he gets pressured, he doesn't really like that too much, and obviously he's had a bunch of surgeries, his leg's a little bit iffy, but really, when he's the one moving forward, looks phenomenal, right? Big power, throwing the volume. When he's getting pushed back, not so good. And he's taking on somebody like Ian Cutelaba, who is the most inconsistent fighter there is. When you want him to wrestle, he'll strike. When you want him to strike, he'll wrestle. He just doesn't have a good game plan, like literally ever. But that being said, though, he does know how to push people back. He's explosive, he's aggressive, all that kind of stuff. He's not really dangerous, especially the modern day Ian Cutelaba, but he is tough. But reckless. So I think Modestas should be able to catch Cutelaba. I don't think he's going to knock him out, but I think he should be able to stay composed and probably work his way to a decision. But realistically, I think the best chance Modestas has is probably first round here. If he goes into the second or third, Ian Cutelaba's cardio is somewhat decent. And obviously he can push a wrestling pace, which obviously is going to work. Bukauskas, tongue twister, man. But Modestas is going to be the pick. Again, I just have to pick the more dangerous fighter in my eyes, but pretty confident, you know, but not really, you know. I think, yeah, Modestas should be able to get it done. Anyway, moving on. Okay, so now moving into an actual confident pick of mine, we have Jessica Andrade taking on Jasmine Jasudavicius. Going with Jasmine here. I think it's kind of a lock in my eyes. Jessica Andrade just isn't who she used to be, right? We get it, she's full of power, she's aggressive, she can dump people on the head, that sort of thing. And obviously she has champion experience and she's fought the top caliber of competition over these last few years. That being said though, there is a game plan to beat her, and that is either A, wrestle her, or B, just avoid the big power coming from her and just throw a decent jab. And that's where I think Jasmine's going to win. Again, I saw her live in the Canada card that happened in Edmonton there. Jasmine looked phenomenal. She had a strong grappling pace on her. She obviously has good control, and I think she's probably going to be able to hold down Jessica Andrade, at least for the first round or two, and then maybe in the third round, just see what happens, you know, just don't get knocked out. But I just don't see Jessica Andrade having that presence in the cage to be able to knock out Jasmine. I think Jasmine's going to be the bigger girl in here. I'm sure she hasn't fought the higher caliber competition here, but I don't think that matters. I think she's just now the next evolution of this division, and I think Jasmine's going to get it done. So, pretty confident in that one. Next. So, the last prelim of the card is Mike Malott taking on Charles Radke. Going with Mike Malott. A, he's Canadian. Come on, even though, you know, Canadian fighters aren't too good. But yeah, Mike Malott, you know, powerful striker. He has slick submissions, fight IQ, decent. Cardio, apart from that 1 30-second lapse that everybody obviously likes to point out there. Cardio's decent, okay? He can hold a good pace, very technical in there. Obviously, he does fade in the third round, but I still think his cardio's decent. He can still pump out a decision, as obviously we saw against the Trevin Giles fight. Obviously, that was very low volume. So obviously, if he goes into a wrestling game plan, as we saw with that one blunder, who knows? But I still think Mike Malott, he's just a very dangerous, very calculated kind of dude in there. And then we got Charles Radke. He's durable. He's kind of wild at times, where he kind of just throws everything out there. But I don't know. I think Mike Malott is going to be able to just avoid the big power coming from Charles Radke. Sure, Charles Radke is probably going to have moments where he's going to look good, but Mike Malott is just, in my eyes, he is the full package and kind of the only male prospect we have, so I kind of need him to succeed here. Charles Radke, I just don't see how he could win apart from just the constant pressure, and Mike Malott starts to fade and maybe wilt, I guess, a little bit, but gonna trust Mike Malott here because, again, he is the only prospect that we have, so come on, Mike. Moving on. So obviously into the main card now, we have BSD taking on Kyle Pepperleck. Gonna go with BSD. I think everybody is, because A, this is short notice. I was gonna do Kyle Fernandez to piece up BSD, but I think BSD kind of saved his career with this one. This is a layup. Kyle just isn't that good based on what I've obviously heard and obviously read about him, and obviously the fight footage I've seen as well. This is short notice. That's not gonna help him, and yeah, I don't know. Like, Kyle's okay. It's just simple as, I just think BSD, he's a dog, okay? Although he did get knocked out, that is to the higher end caliber of this division. You know, he has solid striking, big power, good wrestling. He's kind of everywhere that you need him to be decent. He is decent. He doesn't really excel anywhere. He's just tough, grit, and just, I don't know, power, in a sense. But obviously he does get sucked into a brawl, but I don't think Kyle is that guy. And I think this is a clear win for BSD and sets him on a good little winning streak of 1. Anyway, moving on into the next fight of the main card. Moving on, we have Alexa Grasso taking on Natalia Silva in a women's flyweight bout. This is most likely a title contention, maybe to see who gets the next rematch, because there really isn't anybody else in this division. Alexa Grasso, we all know who she is. She's been obviously the champion before in this division. She has decent boxing, good footwork, submission skills. Okay, you know, if she does get your back, she does kind of hold you down for a little bit. Obviously the weakness there is the range. She's just not that big in the cage, and I think obviously if you're able to keep the range against her, you know, she is susceptible for that. And obviously if you have decent wrestling too, you know, we saw against that Shevchenko fight that obviously she can be held down on her back, and she's pretty useless. She doesn't really offer anything. She's taking on somebody like Natalia Silva, very quick striker, obviously excellent movement, good footwork, everything like that. Obviously high pressure fighters, she does get pushed back a little bit, but she's able to stay composed and work her way around the cage. Gonna go with Natalia Silva here. I think it's just the way the division goes. The older you get, the slower you get. This isn't going to be wrestling unless Alexa Grasso shoots for the wrestling, but even that, I don't think is going to be that good, and I think the takedown defense of Silva is going to be decent. So I'm either seeing a 30-27 from Silva or a 29-28 maybe, because Alexa gets a takedown in the 3rd round or something like that. I just think the striking is just going to be too much from Silva, and she's being able to land a lot more than Alexa Grasso will. So that is the pick. Moving on into the 3rd fight of the main card. Okay, so we have the GOAT, Jose Aldo. He's taking on Ariel Helwani. I'm sure everybody's heard that joke before, but Arman Zahabi. I don't fuck with Zahabi. Straight up, I think he's a nerd. I don't like the way he fights. He's boring. He's technical, sure. He's just a gimp. That's the only word that comes to my mind. He's just a gimp. Where Jose Aldo, it's kind of a Chad, you know? Obviously, you can get held up against the fence. That's not too fun. Fuck you, Mario Batista. But, you know, Jose Aldo, great takedown defense. Obviously, great leg kicks as well. Striking, phenomenal. Right? Obviously, he's able to keep the distance, everything like that. Obviously, with age, you do slow down, but I think he's obviously catered his game to the age where he kind of waits for the opponent to come in. And obviously, he's able to counter and avoid the big cow coming from there. Zahabi, I don't think has anything to offer for Jose Aldo, so I'm pretty confident in Aldo here. And if he loses, I'm gonna cry. But also, fuck the UFC for making this matchup. You know, a legend of the sport. You're giving him Ayman Zahabi. Huh? Who do you think you are? So, co-main event of the evening, we have Valentina Shevchenko and Manon Fiorot for the first belt on the line. You know, Shevchenko is the underdog here. I somewhat get it. Obviously, I'll get into my pick in a second, and obviously Manon is the favorite here. Let's just go over who each girl is, and then I'll give you my pick. I don't really know who I want to go with yet, so let's just see if I can figure it out along the way here. Shevchenko, you know, very well-rounded. She has solid wrestling. Obviously, age is now becoming a factor where she is slowing down a little bit, but as we saw in her last fight, you know, that didn't really pose an issue. She was smart with her game plan. She had decent hands and was able to set up the takedowns. And then obviously she has challenge championship experience where obviously she can go the full 5 rounds. Her cardio is great. And that's 5 rounds of cardio of wrestling she has. Like, that's kind of who she is, right? She is the champion of this division. You know, the flaws of Shevchenko, obviously, she can slow down maybe a little bit, and then obviously her opponents can find a little weasel way in. But I don't know. I think Shevchenko is kind of the full package here. She's taking on somebody like Manon Farot, French, already at a disadvantage. She's a very fast striker, high volume, obviously effective at maintaining the distance too. Takedown defense, very solid. Obviously weakness in there. We don't really know how good her cardio is going into the 4th and 5th rounds. Obviously this fight may be determined within the first 3 rounds of who's going to get this done. I'm going to go with Shevchenko. You know, the only advantage I see Manon has is obviously her striking is going to be decent. But that is the only thing that Shevchenko has to worry about. It's just the striking. She's not going to be shooting takedowns or anything like that. Where Shevchenko, she has the full arsenal. She can make Manon worried about the hands and then shoot for a takedown, or shoot for a takedown and then worry about the hands. It's just, there's so much for Manon to worry about, especially with the pressure of obviously fighting for the belts, fighting at home. I just think there's too many things stacked against Manon, where I think Shevchenko, what has changed? You know, I watched another YouTuber here, and he was just like, if this was 2 years ago or a year ago, this would be a 3-1 line for Shevchenko. It's just, nothing's really changed apart from another year's happened. You know, she won the belt back. Manon, yeah, I don't know. Manon's just a fast striker, and I just don't think it's going to be enough, unfortunately. So, yeah, Shevchenko is going to be the pick. Found out the answer. Pretty confident in Shevchenko. Moving on into the main event of the evening. Okay, main event of the evening. We have Belal Muhammad taking on Della, Maddalena, or JDM for short. Obviously, this is the 2nd belt on the line, so go Canada again, 2 title defenses. Obviously, Belal, we all know who he is. You know, remember the name. He's boring. He's got exceptional cardio, though. You know, pressure, somewhat. He just shoots a bunch of takedowns. Fight IQ, pretty solid. You know, he knows when to shoot, when not to shoot, and obviously strong wrestling skills, as I mentioned. Obviously, he doesn't really have power, so he's not dangerous on the feet. And B, he's not really dangerous on the ground either. He doesn't really have submission wins. I think there's a crazy stat where it's just like, out of, let's just say, for example, 18 fights, he has like 16 decisions or something like that. It's wild. He's just not a deadly guy. He's taking on somebody like JDM, who is a deadly guy, who has great power in his hands. He's relentless whenever he does get taken down. He does continue working up to his feet. He doesn't accept positions. He wants to keep moving, keep working, all that kind of stuff. Takedown defense, solid, but we have seen him being taken down by Gilbert Burns and obviously by, who's that? Oh, I forgot the name, but the guy who made the debut against JDM. No, I don't think that's that, but whatever. Anyway, the Roy cheat, and then he's never been shooting takedowns anyway. But either way, the pick here is going to be Belal. I just think the takedowns are just going to be there. Obviously, I think JDM will have moments and will win rounds. I think this is going to be a lot more competitive than the line thinks it will be. But again, JDM has been taken down by Gilbert Burns and held there, and he was down 2-0 on the scorecards. And this is why I say one of JDM's strengths is the fact that he doesn't stop working. He keeps going, he found the knee, and obviously he knows when to explode out of those positions. But I think Belal's pressure and Belal's going to be able to hold down JDM. You know, obviously in the 4th and 5th round, depends on obviously how each man's cardio is. Obviously, if Belal's wrestling a lot, his cardio obviously is going to slow down. It might be a very different situation where JDM could find success in those later rounds, but gonna be Belal here. I would say it's like a 70%, 30% kind of thing. Like, I'm gonna be rooting for JDM because I think it's gonna be better for the division having somebody fun at the top. But I think Belal was just so effective at taking people down and obviously working there. I just pray that he doesn't think that he can strike. I pray. Just do not stay on the feet if you're Belal. You're going to want to get it down to the ground right away. You know, mix up the striking, of course, but like, just don't go with a game plan of, hey, I'm going to outbox this dude. Don't do that. So anyway, that was the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Obviously, like and subscribe. Helps out the channel tremendously. And yeah, get ready for the best bets, and hopefully we make some money this card. Come on, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.